Eliza Ward balanced a tray of crystal glasses as the floor manager, a wiry man named Tom, shoved another one into her hands without a glance. Table 6. Kane and his entourage. Don't screw it up tonight. This summit's his baby and he's already in a mood. Her stomach tightened at the name. Richard Kane, the billionaire shipping tycoon who'd turned humiliating staff into a sport during these monthly dinners. She'd endured his smirks and jabs for months, pouring wine while he sealed deals worth more than her life savings. Eliza nodded, adjusting her black uniform, and stepped into the bustling dining hall of the luxury hotel, where chandeliers cast sharp shadows over polished tables laden with silverware. The glass doors at the far end burst open, and Kane strode in like he owned the air itself. His entourage trailed him, suits and ties, all nodding vigorously as his laughter boomed across the room. Guests rose in applause, clapping for the man who'd built an empire on oceans and ambition. Eliza kept her gaze low, weaving through the crowd to set up his table, but she felt his eyes lock onto her almost immediately. He paused mid-stride, his broad frame cutting through the chatter. "Well, if it isn't my favorite server," he called out, loud enough for nearby tables to turn. "Hope you've practiced not spilling tonight." A few polite chuckles rippled from his group, but Eliza focused on placing the napkins, her sharp eyes catching the way his PR strategist, Naomi Blake, shot him a subtle warning glance. As she poured the first round of wine, Kane leaned back in his chair, his voice drawling with that familiar edge. "Ah, the beauty with no brains. Careful now, sweetheart, try not to drown my suit this time." The guests around him, investors and dignitaries, chuckled again, more out of obligation than amusement. Eliza's cheeks burned, but she bit her tongue, filling each glass with steady hands. She'd heard worse from him, like the time he'd called her clumsy in front of a full room after a minor slip. Minister Hirdo Sato, the Japanese trade minister seated to Kane's right, sipped his wine without a word, his expression unreadable. Victor Ramos, the rival magnate across the table, hid a smirk behind his glass, clearly enjoying the show. Eliza finished and stepped back, but Kane wasn't done. "You know, in my business, precision matters. One wrong move, and everything sinks." He laughed at his own pun, and the table joined in. Eliza slipped into the staff corridor for a quick breath, her phone buzzing in her apron pocket. She pulled it out, seeing her brother Daniel's name on the screen. "Hey, sis." His voice came through, ragged and urgent from the docks where he worked Kane's shipments. "Listen, it's happening tonight. His ships, everything's collapsing. That cargo vessel out of Singapore? It's run aground, tangled in some illegal route he pushed through. Billions at stake, and the crew's stranded." She froze, the tray still balanced in one hand, her mind racing. Daniel had mentioned whispers of Kane's shady deals before, bribes to cut through restricted waters, corners shaved on safety, but this sounded real, imminent. "How do you know?" she whispered, glancing back toward the dining hall where laughter echoed. "Saw the alerts myself. Media's about to blow it wide open. Just thought you should know, being around him all night." Before she could press for more, the line cut out, static filling her ear. Her brother's words replayed, "His ships, everything's collapsing." She pocketed the phone and returned to the floor, her eyes flicking to Kane, who sat smug and unbothered, toasting his flawless, new shipping empire to the room. Back at table 6, the appetizers arrived, and Eliza distributed plates with quiet efficiency. Kane was deep in conversation with Minister Sato, boasting about his latest fleet expansion. "You'll see, Minister, my routes are ironclad. No delays, no risks. That's why this $4 billion deal is a lock." Sato nodded politely, but his fingers tapped the table edge, a subtle sign of skepticism. Naomi Blake leaned in, smoothing over with a smile. "Mr. Kane's track record speaks for itself." Eliza caught Ramos watching her from across the way, his charming facade cracking into something sharper, as if he sensed the undercurrents. As she cleared an empty glass, Kane turned to her abruptly. "Girl, fetch me another scotch. And make it quick, I've got empires to build." She nodded and headed to the bar, her mind churning over Daniel's call. What if the news broke mid-dinner? Kane's arrogance blinded him, but she saw the cracks, the way his hand trembled slightly when Sato questioned a detail. The evening wore on, courses flowing seamlessly as Eliza navigated the table. Kane's voice grew louder with each drink, dominating the conversation. People like you, Minister, need visionaries like me. Without my ships, global trade grinds to a halt. Sato responded evenly, vision must align with honor, Mr. Kane. Precision and respect for boundaries. Kane waved it off with a laugh, but Eliza noticed Naomi's tense posture, her eyes darting to her phone. As Eliza refilled water glasses, a guest brushed past her roughly, jostling her arm. A single drop of water splashed onto the tablecloth near Kane's plate. His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. Watch it. Months in this job, and you still can't navigate a room without causing chaos. The table fell quiet for a beat, guests shifting uncomfortably. Ramos leaned back, arms crossed, clearly amused. Eliza steadied herself, meeting Kane's glare for a split second before looking away. But inside, Daniel's words burned hotter. Kane wasn't letting it go. He pushed back his chair slightly, his voice rising to carry. This is what I mean. Incompetence everywhere. You think running a multi-billion-dollar company is easy? One slip and it's disaster. He gestured at Eliza, drawing more eyes. Like her, fumbling through life. Sweetheart, maybe find a job that doesn't require balance. A few nervous laughs escaped from the entourage, but Minister Sato's face remained stone. Naomi whispered something to Kane, but he ignored her, his temper flaring. Eliza felt the room's attention on her, the humiliation sinking in like before. But this time, with Daniel's revelation fresh, something shifted. She set down the pitcher, her voice low but steady as she responded. Mr. Kane, if balance is so important, then maybe you should check your own. The words landed like a thrown dart, sharp and unexpected. Kane's smirk froze, his eyes narrowing as he leaned forward, glass still in hand. The room didn't quite catch the weight of her words yet, but a few heads turned, sensing the shift. Minister Sato's gaze flicked to her, his calm facade unbroken but his interest piqued. Victor Ramos, lounging across the table, raised an eyebrow, his lips twitching into a barely concealed grin. Naomi Blake's hand tightened around her phone, her polished smile faltering as she sensed trouble brewing. Eliza stepped back from the table, her heart pounding but her face composed. She'd never spoken back to Kane before, not like this, not in front of his empire of admirers. Months of his barbs, calling her clumsy, worthless, a pretty face with no brains, had built a quiet fire in her, and Daniel's call had lit the fuse. She knew what was at stake tonight. Kane's $4 billion deal with Minister Sato, the one he'd bragged about all evening, was teetering on a lie. Her brother's words echoed again. His ships, collapsing, billions at risk. She glanced at the tray in her hands, steady now, and moved toward the service station, feeling Kane's stare boring into her back. At table 6, Kane recovered quickly, forcing a laugh to break the tension. Well, folks, looks like the help's got opinions tonight, he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. The room chuckled uneasily, but the energy had shifted. Sato sipped his wine, his eyes following Eliza as she disappeared behind the service door. Ramos leaned toward an investor beside him, murmuring something that made the man glance at his phone. Naomi, ever the fixer, leaned into Kane's ear. Richard, let's keep the focus on the deal. Sato's watching. Kane waved her off, his jaw tight. She's nothing. A waitress with a mouth. Let her dig her own grave. In the staff corridor, Eliza leaned against the wall, catching her breath. Her phone buzzed again, but it wasn't Daniel this time, it was a news alert. She swiped it open, her eyes scanning the headline. Kane shipping vessel runs aground in Singapore, billions at risk. Her pulse quickened. The story was breaking, just as Daniel had warned. The article mentioned an illegal route through restricted waters, bribes to local officials, and a stranded crew. Kane's flawless empire was unraveling, and he didn't even know it yet. She pocketed the phone and straightened, knowing she couldn't hide out here long. Tom, the floor manager, poked his head in. Eliza, move it. Table 6 needs another round, and Kane's already griping. She nodded, grabbing a fresh tray of drinks, her mind racing with what she'd just read. Back in the dining hall, Kane was in full performance mode, raising his glass for another toast. To the future of global trade, safe, steady, and untouchable, he declared, his voice booming with confidence. The room erupted in applause, but Eliza caught the hesitation in some faces, investors glancing at their phones, whispers spreading like ripples. She approached the table, setting down drinks with precision, her eyes meeting Minister Sato's for a brief moment. He gave a slight nod, almost imperceptible, as if testing her. Kane noticed and seized the chance to redirect attention. "Careful, sweetheart," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Don't want another spill to ruin the evening." The jab stung, but Eliza kept her face neutral, her hands steady. As she turned to leave, a guest, an older man in a tailored suit, brushed past her, his elbow catching her tray. A glass tilted, nearly falling, and Kane pounced. "Incompetence on display," he barked, standing now, his voice carrying across the room. "Months here, and she still can't carry a tray?" The room tittered nervously, some guests looking away, others leaning in for the drama. Naomi's eyes widened, her hand reaching for Kane's arm, but he shook her off. Eliza steadied the tray, her breath shallow but controlled. She'd had enough. Daniel's call, the news alert, the months of insults, it all collided. She turned to face Kane, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "If I were just a waitress, Mr. Kane, your entire deal tonight wouldn't already be sinking." The words sliced through the air like a blade. Laughter died. Fork stilled. Kane blinked, thrown off script, his glass hovering midair. Phones buzzed across the room as more alerts lit up screens. Investors frowned, scrolling through the same headline Eliza had seen. Minister Sato leaned forward, his gaze locked on her, not Kane. Ramos's smirk widened, savoring the chaos. Naomi went pale, her fingers flying across her phone, whispering to an aide about damage control. Eliza stood her ground, her sharp eyes meeting Kane's for the first time all night, unflinching. The room felt like it had stopped breathing. Kane's face reddened, but he forced a chuckle, trying to reclaim control. "Bold words for someone pouring my drinks," he said, his voice tight. "You think you know something about my business?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only those nearby could hear. "Careful, girl. Words like that can cost you." Eliza didn't flinch, though her pulse hammered. She'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. Sato broke the silence, his voice measured. "Mr. Kane, perhaps we should discuss the news. This, grounding in Singapore. It seems significant." The room's attention shifted, murmurs growing louder as investors began to speak up, their confidence in Kane wavering. Eliza stepped back, blending into the background as the table erupted into tense conversation. Ramos leaned toward Sato, his charm on full display. "Minister, accidents happen. But my fleet, now that's a safer bet." Kane shot him a venomous look, but his usual swagger was faltering. Naomi scrambled to redirect, her voice smooth but strained. "Let's not jump to conclusions. This is a minor issue, easily resolved." But the investors weren't buying it. One man, his face flushed with anger, tossed his napkin onto the table. "Minor? My stakes tied to this deal, Kane. You said flawless." Another joined in, his voice sharp. "If there's truth to this, I'm out." Eliza moved to clear plates, her ears catching every word. She noticed Amira Qureshi, the photographer who'd been circling the room all night, lingering near the table. Amira's camera was up, but her eyes were on Eliza, not Kane. Something about her felt off, not just a staff photographer, Eliza realized. Amira's lens caught Kane's unraveling composure, the sweat beading on his forehead, the way his hand gripped his glass too tightly. Eliza's mind flashed to Daniel's warning, the illegal routes, the bribes. She didn't know how deep it went, but she'd just thrown a match into the room, and it was catching fire. As she carried a stack of plates to the service area, Tom intercepted her, his face a mix of panic and frustration. "What the hell was that, Eliza? You trying to get fired?" She met his eyes, her voice steady. "He's been lying to everyone, Tom. That deal he's toasting? It's built on sand." Tom shook his head, muttering about her being out of her depth, but he didn't stop her as she returned to the floor. The room was buzzing now, the air thick with tension. The chaos at table 6 boiled over as investors unleashed their fury on Kane, their voices clashing like thunder in the once polished dining hall. A burly man with a red tie, his face twisted in betrayal, slammed his napkin down so hard it sent a ripple through the water glasses. "You sold us on flawless, Kane. Ironclad routes, zero risks. What's this crap about a ship running aground in Singapore? My firm's got millions riding on your word." Another investor, a sharp-dressed woman clutching her phone, jumped in, her tones slicing through the air. "Exactly. You paraded this $4 billion deal like it was bulletproof. Now headlines are screaming about illegal shortcuts? I'm pulling my stake before this sinks us all." Kane's usual swagger evaporated, replaced by a sheen of sweat as he fumbled for words. "Listen, this is overblown. A routine snag. My ops team is already rerouting." But his voice lacked conviction, and the room saw through it. Flashes popped from the sidelines where Amira Qureshi maneuvered for angles, her camera capturing every flinch. Minister Sato observed from his seat, his silence louder than the uproar, while Victor Ramos nursed his drink, his eyes dancing with predatory glee. Eliza hovered near the bar, her tray forgotten as she absorbed the revolt. Her single sentence had ignited this, and a rush of vindication mixed with nerves coursed through her. 4 months, she'd swallowed Kane's venom, but tonight, with Daniel's insider tip fueling her, she'd struck back. She watched as more investors piled on, one man rising to his feet. "Bribes? Restricted waters? Kane, if half this is true, you're done. My lawyers will be calling first thing." Naomi Blake darted between them like a frantic conductor, her polished demeanor cracking. "Everyone, please, let's move this to a private room. We can clarify everything." But the burly investor shoved past her. "Clarify? Too late for that. I'm out." Ramos couldn't resist, leaning towards Sato with a velvet-smooth interjection. "Minister, in times like these, reliability matters. My fleet avoids such embarrassments. Shall we talk terms?" Sato's response was a measured hum, his gaze lingering on Eliza as if she'd become the evening's true wild card. The momentum built, and Eliza found herself drawn back into the fray when she stepped forward to clear a cluster of abandoned plates. Heads turned, the room's energy zeroing in on her again. Kane's eyes burned with accusation, but she held steady, her voice rising clear and unyielding above the murmurs. "For months, you've mocked me, Mr. Kane. Clumsy, worthless, just a pretty face slinging drinks. But while you belittled me, you were the one cutting corners. Illegal deals to shave costs, bribes to grease officials, stealing through waters that weren't yours to take. And now your empire's paying the price." The words unleashed a fresh wave of gasps, forks clattering to plates as the accusations landed. An investor whipped around to Kane. "Is this true? Bribes? You've been lying to our faces?" Sato leaned forward, his voice cutting in for the first time. "These are serious claims, Mr. Kane. Evidence?" Ramos chuckled softly, fanning the flames. "Sounds like the waitress knows more than the tycoon." Naomi's hands trembled as she pulled out her tablet, desperately typing notes for a counterspin. Kane's face contorted, veins bulging. "She's lying. No proof, just spite from a nobody." Amira's shutter clicked in rapid bursts, immortalizing Kane's descent, the way his tie loosened, his fists clenched, the empire crumbling in real time. She zoomed in on his sweat-slicked brow, then panned to Eliza, framing her as the unassuming hero flipping the script. Amira had infiltrated as a staff photographer, her real gig chasing Kane's scandals for an international exposé. This moment was dynamite, the billionaire exposed by his own hubris, courtesy of a waitress's bombshell. She snapped a shot of the investors' outraged faces, then another of Sato's contemplative nod. Lowering her camera briefly, Amira caught Eliza's eye across the room, a spark of solidarity passing between them. More flashes erupted as word spread, turning the summit into a media frenzy. Kane tried to rally, barking at Naomi. "Get security, shut this down." But the damage was irreversible, guests already texting contacts, the scandal viraling beyond the walls. In the midst of the uproar, Eliza slipped backstage to the staff corridor, stacking plates with shaking hands. Footsteps echoed behind her, and she turned to find Kane barreling in, his presence filling the narrow space like a storm cloud. He grabbed her arm roughly, his voice a venomous whisper that trembled with rage. "One sentence can ruin a man, you know that? And I'll make sure one ruins you. Lawsuits, blacklisting, you'll never work again." For the first time, cracks of desperation showed in his eyes, the fear of losing everything bubbling under his bluster. Eliza wrenched her arm free, her pulse thundering but her resolve iron. "Threats won't bury the truth, Mr. Kane. Your lies did this to you." He loomed closer, his breath ragged. "You think you're clever? A dockworker's sister spilling secrets, I'll drag your whole family down." Tom burst in then, eyes wide. "Mr. Kane, sir, you can't be back here." Kane shot him a withering look but backed off, muttering curses as he stormed out. Eliza leaned against the wall, the encounter leaving her breathless, but a fierce pride ignited within. She'd faced the giant and held her ground. The dinner dissolved into a hasty exodus, guests snatching coats and murmuring about the fallout as they fled the scandal-soaked room. Eliza pushed through a side exit into the crisp night, the city's hum a welcome escape from the chaos inside. She paced the alley, replaying the night's twists, Daniel's urgent call, her defiant words, the room's stunned silence. A soft voice broke her thoughts. "Miss Ward?" Minister Sato stood there, his suit impeccable under the streetlight, a subtle aura of authority about him. "What you did in there? Sharp eyes like yours are rare in a world of bluster. Don't let them go to waste." He extended a business card, the gold-embossed ministry seal catching the light. "We're building oversight teams for international trade. Observant minds, unafraid to speak, people like you could reshape the game." Eliza took it, her fingers brushing the card's edge, a door cracking open to possibilities she'd never imagined. From the shadows, Victor Ramos approached, his charm dialed up with a hint of calculation. "Quite the performance, Ms. Ward. Kane's loss could be someone's gain." He handed her his own card, sleek and minimalist. "If you're open to new horizons, my operations value quick thinkers. No more trays, just real power." His nod was slow, appraising as if scouting a rising star. Eliza pocketed it, the weight of options settling in. Then Amira emerged from the doorway, her camera bag slung over her shoulder, a notebook in hand. "Hey, that was incredible. The world's eaten up by guys like Kane, but you just flipped the script. Your side of this story, the waitress who toppled a tycoon, it deserves the front page. Will you let me tell it? Interviews, exclusives. This could change everything for you." Eliza hesitated, then nodded, a smile breaking through. "All right, let's make sure the truth sticks." Amira grinned, jotting notes. "Perfect. You're not just a witness anymore, you're the hero." As they talked under the stars, Daniel's text buzzed in. "Sis, you did it. Ship's mess is all over the news. Proud of you." Eliza exhaled deeply into the cold night, the echoes of applause from unlikely allies ringing in her ears. Shaken yet transformed, she stepped from silence into the spotlight, her quiet strength finally recognized. A new chapter unfolding where she called the shots. As Eliza stepped into the night, her story was just beginning. A single sentence had toppled an empire, and her voice, once silenced, now echoed with purpose. The world was watching, and she was ready to shape what came next. If this tale of courage and transformation moved you, hit that like button to show some love, share it with someone who needs a spark of inspiration, and subscribe to catch more stories that hit right in the feels. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from, and what do you think of Eliza's stand?